Hello everybody and welcome to this Divine Renovation webinar. My name's Hannah Vaughan-Spruce. I'm the Regional Coordinator for Divine Renovation in the UK, and all of you are so welcome here today. We're really pleased to see all of you. We're really glad you could join us again this week for another of these webinars. At Divine Renovation, we seek to inspire and equip parishes to be missional, and through them to reach lots of people, to bring them to Jesus Christ. And on these webinars that we've been holding over the last few weeks, we're really seeking to help parishes navigate the current season that we're in, which is a challenging season in lots of different ways. And most importantly, to help parishes navigate it with an eye on mission. And today we really want to turn the focus onto leadership. What does good leadership look like in this season, which I'll speak about in a moment. But just to start off today, I'm just going to ask Patricia to share her screen, and I'm just going to share some of the things on Zoom. So if Zoom is new to you, this is just how we're going to some of the functions on Zoom we want to share with you. So this should be coming up in a moment. So you'll see at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a mute and unmute button. So we'd love you to keep it on mute throughout the session. Today we've got quite a large group, so it would be helpful if you keep your video off just during this first part, so you can just turn the video off, and then when we go into breakout rooms later, we'd love you to turn it on again. You'll see there's a chat function at the bottom as well, so we'd love you to add your questions and your comments into this. I can see people are doing that already, which is fantastic. So in fact, right now, just if you would share where you're coming from today, your name, your parish, that would be awesome. We'd love to see where you're coming from. And then reactions on the right-hand side. So you can add thumbs up, clapping if you agree with something someone's saying. And then finally, right at the top right-hand corner, there's speaker view and gallery view. And we would love you to put it onto speaker view, because that means you can see the people who are speaking. So for those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars before, I'll just share a little bit about the structure, how we do it. So we have some input from different contributors who we're going to introduce in a moment. And after that, we are going to have some time for questions. So you've got an opportunity to ask any questions you like of our contributors today. And I'd love to invite you to share them in the chat. So put them in the chat throughout the talks that you're going to hear. And then finally, we have an opportunity for you to go into breakout rooms towards the end. And this is great because it just gives you a chance to connect with others, with other parish leaders who are also leading during this season. You can share what you're doing, you can hear their experiences, and we just want to connect parishes with each other so that we can learn from each other. So that's what today's going to look like. I'm just going to invite each of our contributors today to introduce themselves very briefly. So we'll start with Fr James Mackay. Fr James, would you like to introduce
Hello,
yourself?
everyone. Yeah, I'm Fr James Mackay. I'm the parish priest of the parish of Our Lady of Walsingham in East London, more specifically around the Royal Docks, where you find London City Airport and the Excel Exhibition Centre, aka at the moment the NHS Nightingale.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You just come from the Nightingale today, so it's awesome you can be here. Father Mark Hogan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, lovely to see everybody. Father Mark, so I'm parish priest down here in Winchester, St Peter and the Winchester Martyrs, and I've also got a diocesan role, which is Episcopal Vicar for Evangelisation.
Amazing, thank you. And finally, Fiona O'Reilly. Fiona, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, and it's great to see everyone today. I am the Director of Global Strategy for Divine Renovation, normally based out of London, but doing this particular global pandemic from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. It's so great to have all three of you on today. We're just going to start today in prayer. As we're gathering from all over the place, I'm just going to ask Father Mark if you would lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Pleasure. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we ask you to bless us all today, to bless our conversations, to help us all in our own spheres of influence to lead in the way that you would like us to lead, that you need us to lead in this current time, in this current season. And we ask also that we will faithfully follow your Son, Jesus, our Good Shepherd, so that he may lead us all rejoicing to the fullness of life, life in abundance with you. And we make this prayer through him who is your Son and our risen Lord, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. So today's topic is on leadership, especially in a time of crisis. Leadership is something that we talk about a lot in Divine Renovation. It's one of the 3 keys that we talk about. Leadership is one of those 3 keys to parish renewal. And what you'll find in Divine Renovation, a parish that's using Divine Renovation principles, is that the parish priest will lead out of a team. So he'll have a small team of people who will be responsible for leading with him in the parish. And so we really want to focus on what does really good leadership look like, especially in this time of pandemic. We've said that never has good leadership and healthy leadership teams been more important than right now. So we're going to be hearing a little bit from Father Mark and Father James about their experience of leading, and from Fiona's her experience of coaching parishes around the world. So just to get us started today, we're going to have a poll come up on your screen. And this poll is a question that we would love you to answer. And it is, do you have a parish leadership team? Do you have a parish leadership team? So that should come up right now. And you will just have 3 options to answer: yes, no, or not sure. I can't see it coming up, but hopefully it should soon. And never mind, we might come back to it in a moment. We'll come back to this question about parish leadership team. But first of all, I would love to just go into asking Father James, what's been your experience of leading over this last month? It's been a crazy month. We've had to deal with all kinds of things. What has it been like for you?
Well, crazy is a good word, I guess. Very quick adaptation to the new reality that we needed. Thanks be to God, I do have a senior leadership team, an SLT. So as soon as it became apparent that some form of lockdown was going to be in place, we got together and started to plan for that reality, becoming an online church, at least for this period, and that's gone very well. It's funny how when you're all on the same side, the gifts and abilities of each individual member really are deployed. So we've carried one another through this, and particularly I've been carried as I've taken on extra ministry in the hospital. And I would say that, already as a senior leadership team, we're starting to look to the future, how this crisis has affected us, and the opportunities, the new opportunities that have been given to us through it. So as well as dealing with a certain level of stress, I think as a team, we're all starting to get a bit excited about what comes next.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you've had to juggle the hospital along with leading a parish that's got an extra level of complexity. What about you, Father Mark? How's this last month been for you?
So I've tried to think of a few images that are kind of trying to help understand my situation, and one of them is a bit like a snow globe. If any of you have seen those snow globes, you've got a lovely scene of a city or a building or whatever it is, and you shake it and all the snow comes down. It looks very pretty, but it's a bit chaotic, it's a bit messy, and every time the goalposts kind of shifted, I was feeling like the snow globe me had been given a big shake, or the whole situation given a big shake, and then it started to settle down a little bit, and then the goalposts would shift again, and trying to keep on top of that. And I think in that context, the senior leadership team, the SLT that we've got here in the parish, has been vital. Meeting with them virtually rather than in person has just given kind of certain anchor points where I could just kind of be with them and try and work out the bearings, where we are and where we're going, trying to look a bit towards the horizon a bit of a mini vision towards the next stage, helping to make better decisions than if I was trying to work this all out on my own, trying to do this all by myself. And and also knowing that after the meeting, it hasn't all depended upon me. There's a great team who are going off and doing various different things and getting on with stuff and making a difference. And then we're coming back together and regrouping. And it's been really great support as well. I think hopefully I've been able to support them, but they've certainly supported me. So I haven't felt like I'm doing this on my own. I'm not kind of trying to work it all out all by myself or struggling with that. We've been together. And doesn't mean we've got everything right, but we've grappled with it together and supported each other and been able to move forward in that way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Father Mark. Fiona, I just wonder, what would you say about why leadership is important at this time? Could you just kind of summarize like why it's important right now? Sure.
And I guess what I'm saying is out of the context of coaching a number of parishes implementing Divine Renovation principles, both in Canada and in the US and India, and also working with others around the world. And so I think we see two things. One is that leadership basically has got a task of setting direction in the midst of all the chaos, setting at least an initial, we're going that way. And of course, if you've got a clear view of what your vision is, that helps, because one of the things leadership can do is just remind teams our vision hasn't changed. It's just that our methods and models now need to evolve, because, I love that image, Father Mark, of what you were all in a bit of a snowstorm right now, but at least we know roughly what direction we're trying to head. Now we just need to adapt to the rapidly changing weather. And one of the things that we see is that for pastors, and where they have a team, for the teams who are with them in the midst of that snowstorm, being in a team or quickly gathering a team around you just really helps, because you can spread the load, you can bring a diversity of views and a balance of strengths to the problems, many of which we've never faced before. And also there's just that breadth of perspective and more heads on and more eyes on the problem. But what I would also say is that, teams can help each other recognize when the season is evolving, because actually this is chaotic right now, and it's going to stay chaotic for a while. I think all of us were pretty much getting to Easter in the first couple of weeks, and the snow blindness was acute. Things have settled a little bit since then, but we're now heading into the next round of changes in different countries as governments work out what some relaxation of social distancing might look like, or as some of the other challenges start to come to the fore. And so having a team means there are several people working through the problem together, and then able to run with the different things we want to try in response to that. It's not just all coming back to one person. And that's going to be really important as we go forward, because we can't stop innovating now. The needs are going to continue to evolve, and we're going to need to keep saying, well, okay, what's the right way to respond in this sort of 2 or 3 week window as we live in this sort of blended digital and physical world that we're about to step into. So for all those reasons, leadership matters. And if you possibly can, leading out of a team or getting a team around you can start to lead out of, really helps in this kind of season.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I'm sure like in lots of people's minds now, lots of very practical questions will be popping up, like how do you do this? So I'd love to encourage you just to share that in the chat, put all of your practical questions in there, and we will try to answer as many as we can. But I just want to start with one of them, and I'm just going to put this to you, Father James. How often do you meet with your team, and what does that look like? How often and how long?
Well, as we did physically, so we meet digitally once a week at 7:30 until 9 p.m. On a Monday evening. So we've been faithful to that, meeting on Zoom. Although since we've been in lockdown, there have been quite a few more little mini meetings. So we've kind of split off into groups of 2s and 3s, so that. Yeah, because as Fiona said, the things are moving quite rapidly, and it might be in the midweek that you need to adjust. And so we've kind of factored that in. So we have conversations on Monday, but we really don't. We feel sometimes we won't know the answer until Thursday, when the government announces something, or when our metrics show that something's worked that didn't work before. So then we say, okay, let's revisit that as a 3. Kind of like in these breakout groups on the Zoom, you have a breakout group to deal with something specific. And then you might need to call someone else in from outside the senior leadership team, who very much is on board with the vision, is a disciple in the parish, and could help you in that specific way. So in a sense, the once a week format has become a bit more flexible during this time. And that's really where technology has blended in quite well, because it's far easier to get someone if they don't need to drive all the way to your building. So that's been really helpful.
Yeah, it's kind of rapidly responding to the changing situation, isn't it? Father Mark, how have things changed since the beginning? So at the beginning, it was like this kind of crazy snow globe. Is it still like that, or are you finding yourself going into a different phase now?
So to mix metaphors and confuse everything, it kind of almost a bit like being a fell runner. I've never done fell running, but I've done lots of long distance walking. I've seen people fell running. You need to be really agile when you're a fell runner, when the terrain is kind of a bit precarious. And at the beginning, we were having to be really agile. As Father James was saying, we were having little mini meetings for half an hour, 2 or 3 times a week, just to touch base, because suddenly we couldn't have public worship in the church, or suddenly the church had to be closed completely, whatever it might be. Now the terrain's a bit flatter. The agility doesn't need to be there, but we don't know how long this is going to last. It's more like just long distance running, just keep going and trying to get a bit more into a rhythm. But at the same time, we're aware that things could change again soon, and we might need to go into that agile phase. The terrain might be about to change. So at the moment, we've got back into our normal rhythm of meeting once a week, 3 hours a week. We meet for, which is great, and it's amazing how easy it is to fill that time with all the stuff we're getting through at the moment. But we're prepared, and we're just looking a week ahead at the most, and saying we might need to put something else in there just to readjust as the circumstances change.
Yeah. Fiona, from what you've seen in parishes, how do you think things are changing in terms of leadership now? What does leadership look like at this stage now?
So I think in this season, one of the things that leadership does is it has a slightly shorter time horizon that it's considering. So the vision for the parish, about wanting to make disciples and help people come to know Christ and then grow in that, for instance, may be unchanged. But instead of being able to set a plan for 6 or 12 or 18 months, we're just not on a season that lends itself to that. So most parishes are asking themselves the question, what do we want to be able to say in 3 months' time or 6 months' time when we look back on this part of the journey? And then where do we see God acting? What skills do we put in our hands, and then how can we get behind all of that? And so that the shorter time horizon is appropriate, because we've just got a lot of moving parts right now. I think the other thing, and we've kind of touched on it with Father Mark and Father James, there's a level of flexibility about how we meet, how we work as a team, which will evolve fairly constantly over the next couple of months. Most teams that I work with are basically meeting either, as Father James said, they're sticking with their core meeting and adding meetings around it. Some of them have also moved to a bit of a command center mindset where they have shorter meetings, but 2 times a week, or they're flexing what they used to do so that they're speaking often enough to deal with the pace of what's hitting them. And that pace is varying depending on what country you're in, depending on what phase of the pandemic you're in. So it'll continue to evolve. But the big thing is, are you able to get the right people in the room, at least to do virtually, to make the key decisions? The other big thing that is helpful for a lot of parishes at this point is you won't have all the skills you need in the people who were there before the pandemic, but often volunteers have popped up who have new skills. And so grouping people into teams focused on specific outcomes, your Sunday live stream, your digital alpha, comms, outreach into the community, keeping in touch with the most vulnerable. So grouping people by those outcome areas can be a really helpful way of basically helping people be effective, especially when it's chaotic and especially when there are new people joining in the mix, because everyone's clear what that team exists to do. So, those things are just some things that have evolved with this season. And then the last thing I'd say is, you'd always be keeping one eye on the team dynamics, but right now, stating the obvious, everyone's a bit afraid. Everyone's in week 6, 7, 8 of lockdown. And so making time, and as a leader, you almost have to make the call that we are making time no matter what, to pray together, to have some of that social glue, to remind ourselves on some of the non-negotiables, like dealing with conflict by a call rather than by text or email. Just that requires a bit of extra love and care at this point.
Absolutely. Fiona, can I ask you, if a parish priest has no team right now around him, he's not set up a leadership team like this before, and all of a sudden he's, in this situation in his parish, he's kind of finding himself leading on his own, what would you do if you were in that situation?
It's a great question, and there are so many priests who find themselves in that situation, and the good news is that there are absolutely ways through it. So what we suggest doing, and certainly what we see priests doing to great effect right now, is start off with just getting clear in your vision. of what you want this next 3-6 months to be about, because you can only lead if you've got a bit of a sense of where you want to go, and people can only join in if they've got a bit of a sense of what you're asking them to join in with. So spend time in prayer and get clear on what you would like to be able to say, or you'd like the parish to have been over the next 3 to 6 months. Then identify those handful of people who you already trust, you already have a relationship within the parish, and share your initial thinking with them. Ask them, look, this is what's on my heart. Does this resonate with you? Is this something you'd be interested in getting involved to make happen over the next couple of months? And, it's not a lifetime commitment. It's, make it a bounded commitment for sort of 3, 4, 6 months at most at this point, and just invite them into the conversation to figure out how we might make that happen. And, what are you looking for? Well, as with any leadership team, you want some basic unanimity around the vision, because you don't want to be pulling in separate directions. You want a balance of strengths. You want some people that are good at sort of the big picture, where could we go thinking, and you want some people who are really good at getting stuff done at the executing side. And then you want those people who are great at the communication side, the relationship side, the influences. So you're looking for a bit of a mix of those, because none of us have all those gifts. So that's one of the reasons why leading out of a team is so helpful. And after that, it's starting to build up a little bit of trust and a little bit of vulnerability as you journey together in, I would say, picking 1 or 2 things to get going with, and cut your teeth on those, and then add more in. Don't try and attack on every front at once, everything your vision might require. But those would be some initial suggestions. And certainly we've seen priests do that to good effect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Father James, if you were starting out from scratch, how would you go about it? What would you do?
What, like just me on my own, no team?
Exactly. If you had no team right now.
Well, I was there once. If I was starting off in lockdown, I think, like everything that's happening these days, it's getting accelerated. So, but I think that's where sort of prayer at the beginning is so important, as Fiona said. And to be clear, as just to support what Fiona said, to have a vision, to vision, look into your heart and say, okay, what's my dream for the parish, and really to sit on that. There's no rush, and then take advantage of the situation, because there are advantages to it. Church is closed, so the culture of the parish can be rewritten a lot quicker than it could have been when things were open. That means that you can share your vision and be vulnerable with people, and that not get out. Like there aren't going to be any whispers, because no one's around unless they're online. So you can really start to build something with people you feel comfortable, so to speak, with being vulnerable with. You can start to dream and put something together and start working on it from the word go. So if I was speaking to a priest right now who's thinking, I don't have a team, but I'm full of desire, I think, great, you're in a great place. Dream, pray, write things down, and then call a few people in. That's how I started. Literally, I just opened myself up to about 10 parish members who I trusted, who I was close to, and they got involved on that dream. They didn't go, well, I fundamentally disagree with you, Father. They got excited by what excited me, and we had the beginnings of something. We had the beginnings, ultimately, of what was the senior leadership team. So I like to call this a period of, we're calling isolation and all those things, but it's also a period of incubation where things can really be nourished and grow secretly, so that when you are ready to share with the world, you've got a great launch pad. So so dream, vision, pray, and then be vulnerable. This isn't the time to hide behind the collar. In a sense, it's a time to take it off and be human with people, because that really helps vision catch fire. Yeah.
Love it, Father James. Great thoughts there. Would you add anything else to that, Father Mark? If you were doing this for the first time from scratch, you were doing it all over again?
Yeah, just a few mini things. I mean, to emphasize the prayer, I think the prayer is central, and particularly praying about, okay, Lord, I'm in this situation. I feel that I'm struggling by myself, or I could make better decisions if I had some help. Who should I turn to? And maybe if you can find 2 or 3 people, as others have said, to turn to. I would say, look, let's just do this as a temporary thing for the duration of this season. Let's not make it a permanent, you're going to be here with me for the next 10 years or whatever, so that it's clear for them and it's clear for you, so that if they don't like it, or if it's not quite working out in some way, there's a get out somewhere and people don't feel like they're trapped forever. So that would be one thing I'd say. Another thing I'd say is maybe just find a decent webinar, a decent video off the network, something that you're really passionate about that really expresses where you want to go in this particular time, and just ask them to watch it, and maybe watch it separately and then have a conversation based on that and just see where the conversation is going. Are they on board with what are they seeing things in the same way? Are they responding with the same kind of excitement or passion, or same kind of desire that you have? And then I suppose the other thing is, if you're new to a parish, or you've really got nobody that you can turn to in the parish for whatever reason, then still reach out to other people. Maybe you've got priest friends, maybe you've got some good lay friends who you trust, and just even have some chats with 2 or 3 of those outside who can just help you make better decisions than if you feel like you're cut off from the rest of the world and trying to do this all by yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. There's some really wise advice there. There are so many questions here. The questions are fantastic, so please keep them coming. I'm just going to go to the first one. People have been asking, what's the difference between a leadership team and the parish council, and perhaps like what are the sizes of each of those? Fiona, do you want to give that one a go?
Sure. And look, many pastors will have inherited a parish pastoral council, or at least something that has that name. So you get all sorts of things flying under that particular flag. But what we tend to see is most effective when parishes are wanting to be outward focused on mission, focused on helping people come alive in their faith, and then bringing others into relationship with Christ, is to recognize that in the longer term, you probably need one group of folks, which would typically be your leadership team, driving through against the plans that will make the vision come about. So they're primarily focused on making things happen and doing the small S strategy thinking about, in concrete terms, how are we bringing this to life? And you have a separate group, typically with a heavy proportion of people who are very strong on the strategy side, doing the big picture thinking, the sort of 3-year, 5-year thinking and dreaming. And they are not totally disconnected from the pastor and the leadership team. They're all pursuing the same vision, but their time horizon is different. It's the 3 to 5 years. They tend to be thinking in terms of the kind of big things that the parish might want to do, and they're kind of sketching out the broad picture, which the leadership team will then be able to take, to refine, and to adjust as they then they come into that 0 to 18 months time frame where they're putting things into action. In this season, if you're starting from scratch, I would say don't try and start up a pastoral council. Things are too chaotic to be trying to set a 3 or 5 year vision just right now. Focus on having a leadership team that you can work with that's all about making things happen in that sort of 3 to 6 month time horizon. And then as we move hopefully into a next normal, that's the right point then to revisit, how you might divide and conquer a bit better. But many parishes actually start off with a leadership team who's doing all the strategy thinking in a sort of a, first year and a half time frame, and then only over time bring in a pastoral council. So it's fine to start that way. And size-wise, just because that question often comes up, we tend to find leadership teams are at their most effective when they're around 6. Now, you could have 5, you could have 7. Get to more than 7 or 8, you have a committee, not a team. And certainly as you're getting to sort of 10, 12, what you basically have is just a consultative group, and that's not helpful. So we would always encourage people with leadership teams, somewhere around that kind of 6 mark is fine. 4 or less, it might be where you have to start right now if you're diving into this from scratch. But often that just means when you come out of this particular pandemic, you might end up with a bit more of an issue because not everyone can be there every time. And suddenly if you're only 4 and then 1 or 2 people can't show, you're down to very small numbers indeed. So that's great. Thank you so much, Fiona.
There's a question here, which is, what is the criteria for joining the parish leadership team, and what is the selection process? So I wondered, Father Mark, do you want to talk a little bit about your process for putting together your team?
Yeah, I think everybody does it differently. I've heard so many different ways. So I've been in the parish now for 2.5 years, just over 2.5 years. And when I came, I wanted, one of the first things I did was sign up for the network. And one of the first things I wanted to do was get together a team, but I didn't really know anybody, or people I knew were from 10, 15 years ago from connections or different things throughout the diocese. So I prayed a lot, and I was struggling because I wanted to set up a leadership team, but didn't know who to turn to. And that's where the idea of setting up something temporary came from. So I started having conversations with those who are on the pastoral council, with a few other people I knew, sharing a little bit of the vision, and just talking that through, seeing what the response was. And then I said, look, can we set up a little temporary team? And just invited, I think, 3 other people onto that. And then it's just kind of developed as that, and temporary has developed into kind of 2.5 years later, 2 or 3 of them are still on that. So I think that's how we went about it. And I was trying, I suppose, to get people primarily who shared the vision. Also, well, obviously goes without saying, people of deep faith and commitment. But also I was trying to get a bit of a balance, as Fiona was mentioning earlier, in terms of some of those strengths really, and what people were able to bring to the table. So it wasn't all yes people. I certainly didn't want people who were just going to kind of nod every time I put forward an idea, or I wanted people who were going to be able to think things through and challenge me, or have different ideas, and that's been the case. And that I could trust as well. Needed to be people that I could trust. That was really important, and that could trust me.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're going to be spending so much time with this team. You want people that you're going to, that you get on with well, that you love being with, that it's a kind of a joy to be together every week as well, I think, don't you? Father James, there's a question about how many people you have in your team. And I just wonder whether you could say a little bit about what are the types of things that your leadership team focuses on every week, just to give people a flavour of that.
Okay, so currently there are 6 members of our senior leadership team. That's as big as it's ever been. We started out as a 5, and then just before, providentially, as it turned out, we transitioned 2 new members in, and then another one as 2 members transitioned out, and that was a beautiful transition. And I feel like the Holy Spirit's given us the kind of the gift set, the skill set for this pandemic, although we weren't to know that at the time. So week on week, I suppose, number one, we deal with decisions to be made, discussions to be had. Those are 2 areas. So like some things will be up for discussion. There may be more long-term ideas or plans that we have, which kind of carry over. So we have an actions log for that. So if there's something that doesn't quite feel like it merits a decision just yet, it goes on the action log for further discussion. But really, the senior leadership team, for me, its essence is that it's a decision-making machine. Now, if you leave Father James, me, to make all the decisions, what you see behind you would be flames and ash of a parish that once was. It's a terrible way to lead all on your own and make decisions all on your own. And it's proof that the Holy Spirit's real, that the Church exists 2,000 years later, if that's the way that things have been running. Leading out of a team, making a decision which ultimately, as parish priests, rests on me, means that you have something which has been considered by 5 or 6, so how many people are there, different hearts and minds, and we only sort of execute a decision once all of our hearts and minds are satisfied that it's the right thing to do. So one of the joys of working in this way for me is I feel quite free, because I'm an ideas guy, and I'm a creative kind of person, but those kinds of people don't always start out with the best plans. But by the end of the process, the plan that we have together, when it's gone through the rigorous process we subject it to, is nearly always a beautiful thing, and much more than we could have each individually conceived of or even planned for. It's I come out of my SLT meetings every week energized, because I always come out with something new. I never come out with just what I put into it, but something which.
Amazing. I just want to put a question to both of you, Father Mark and Father James, about, because this idea of sharing responsibility for leadership with lay people, that's a pretty new idea in the Catholic Church in some ways. This is something that isn't happening everywhere. Like, what is that what is that like for you, and why have you kind of chosen to go down this route? Don't know who wants to kick off on that. Do you want to go for it, Father James?
Me? Yeah. So it's actually liberating. That's the thing. Freedom looks terrified when you're comfortable in your jail cell. But once you actually get out and breathe the free air, you think, oh gosh, I was in prison. And that's pretty much what it's like for me now. You know, like, can't imagine going back to that way of being a priest ever again, and I wouldn't want to. It's terrible. So, and it brings you to life, because, you know, I'm not just in charge of something anymore, but I'm part of something which is alive. And as the Code of Canon Law says, Canon 129, paragraph 2, I'm a canonist, we are all co-responsible for the mission of the church. And it feels like we're really delivering on that canon in its fullness. So, it's been a joy for me.
Amazing. There are lots of questions here, so I'm just going to jump back into one of the questions. Maybe this one's for you, Father Mark. How are your meetings structured? How frequent are they? How do you develop your planning in a practical sense? There's lots of stuff there, so however you want to answer that in this short time.
I'll do what I can. So we meet every Monday afternoon. We meet from, I think it's 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock. Whenever my diary tells me I need to be there on the Monday afternoon, and we gather. We have a short little "How are you?" kind of touch base, which is really good. We begin with a prayer, and then we've got a spreadsheet. We've been using Google Sheets, but I'm sure there's lots of different ways of doing it, and we've just got a few columns going across. So there's topic, there's action agreed, there's person who's responsible for it, and then there's date when it needs to be done. So we've got those four, and just people can add to it during the week, so everyone's got editing facilities. And we begin just by thrashing through as quickly as we can all those ones from previous meetings. So we'll go around the room, just going down the spreadsheet. Right, this action, that was down to you. Moira, have you managed to do that? Yes, brilliant. Jared, have you done what you were supposed to do? No, why not? Okay, when can you get it done by? Just really moving through it as quickly as possible, trying not to spend more than 5 or 10 minutes on any topic, really. And then when we've got to the end of that, we'll go through, and people have put on the spreadsheet, at least I'm encouraging them to, sometimes they forget, to put on the spreadsheet the other things they'd like to talk about. And I just go around one person at a time and say, okay, Mike, what's the most important thing that you want discussed before we leave the room? Let's discuss that first. And when Mike's had his chance for us to thrash that out and come up with a decision and put it on the spreadsheet, I say, right, okay, Moira, what's the most burning thing for you? And we all, including myself, we all get a turn to do that. And we just keep going around so that people can bring the stuff that's most important to them in terms of what they're doing in the week, really. And I suppose that's become even more important as those members of the senior leadership team have taken responsibility for different aspects of parish work and supporting other people, so that they can then help those people whom they're supporting get on with things, because decisions have been made and we can move things forward. And it's just really efficient and effective. It works really well. And I suppose what we'll do is once a month, we'll have a more strategic, with a mini S, meeting, at least in theory, that's what we do, and look at some topics that might take us 45 minutes, 50 minutes to have a real good look at in detail. And at that, we try and make reference to the parish plan, which our pastoral council has put together, and just see where we are. Are we on track with the things we're supposed to be doing there? And do we need to adjust or shift?
Wow. Love it, Father Mark. Sounds fantastic. A question about, so someone says that they've obviously got a pastoral council, but they don't have a senior leadership team or a leadership team. And they're talking about, is it possible to convert one into the other, especially at this kind of time when you suddenly want people around you, perhaps on a weekly basis, to help make decisions? Fiona, what would you suggest in that kind of scenario?
So at the end of the day, it's about how do pastors gather some people around them who can help them respond to the season. And the name of the team is important insofar as people understand that, to me, here's what I'm here to do. So I'd probably be slightly wary of saying to the pastoral council, you're now my leadership team, we're going to keep calling you the pastoral council though, and you're going to do anything and everything, because you can do that, and for the next 3 to 6 months that would probably be okay, but pragmatically sooner or later you're going to have to get to a point where You probably want to separate out. I have one group doing the big picture thinking, and I have one group really helping me do the doing. There are different time commitments involved with each. There are different strengths needed for each. They would work in completely different ways. Pastoral councils might meet maybe once a month rather than once every week. And so just because pastoral council comes with a lot of Catholic baggage, people hear it to mean certain things. If that's true in your particular parish, you might find that creating a new team just helps you signal the fact this is something different. And particularly if you're doing it as an ad hoc thing, that'll give you a lot more wiggle room to say, look, for the purposes of this pandemic, we're getting together a little bit of a leadership team around the parish priest to really support and help the parish respond well in this season. And then at the end of, when we get to our next normal, whenever that is, then we'll figure out where to from here. And you'd have more wiggle room, I suspect, if you created a new team rather than if you just kind of continue to fly the pastoral council flag, but did a whole load of things under it. Because if you then want to change who's on that group, or if you want to change its focus and composition, you might end up with, you painted yourself into a bit of a corner because people are going, but that's the pastoral council, you can't take it away. So that would be very practically just tackling it.
That's fantastic, thank you. And just a final question for the two priests, just about this time of kind of self-leadership, because obviously, there's been a few sprints, you could be working, around the clock. How are you ensuring that you kind of take care of yourself, do the whole self-care thing and self-leadership at this time?
Well, Mark?
Shall I go first? Okay. So actually, in some ways, it's been easier because I found almost a kind of monastic rhythm, because we decided early on, when we thought we could keep the churches open, we wanted them to be open as long as possible. We thought we could open them from early in the morning through till sundown, kind of 6-7 o'clock at night. So it meant our morning prayer has been first thing in the morning, which we live stream, and then we have mass at 7 o'clock in the evening, and then we have night prayer at 9. And it just means that rhythm and structure, and the church is closed the rest of the time. In fact, it's closed apart from me and the couple of priests who are with me in the house as well at the moment. But it means that I've got that rhythm and that structure of prayer, which is really helpful. And we've started 8 o'clock in the morning. We're doing morning prayer followed by adoration and finishing with benediction. So that's 8 till 9. So there's my holy hour is in there as well, which is great. So that's been fantastic. I was chatting with someone earlier. I'm finding I'm getting quite exhausted with all these Zoom conversations and things. I'm loving them, and there's lots of good stuff coming out of them, but I'm finding really tired. So when it comes to the evening, between mass and night prayer, I'm trying to have switched off work by then. Usually I'd be having evening meetings, or I'd be working till 9, half 9 at night. Now I'm trying to cut off by 6:30 in the evening. And then the other stuff is just a few bits that don't require much brain space. Yeah. I'm still managing to keep up with my spiritual direction online. So I'm managing to do that through Zoom. We have what's called a supervision scheme in our diocese. So someone I meet up with every 4 to 6 weeks just to talk about the job and the role and the ministry of being a priest and some of the practical things. So that's carrying on through Zoom. And then friendships and other priests. We've got a group in our diocese that we meet up with about once a month as well. And we just chat things. So there's a few suggestions anyway.
Wonderful. Father James, would you add anything in about 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'd say, as some of you may know, I've been occupied with the chaplaincy of the Nightingale. So any downtime I do get, I'm trying to use for silence. Right now, as the Nightingale kind of closes down, I can't wait. I'm sort of getting out of my garden. I've actually done gardening, and I'm starting to assess and think to myself, well, if there's going to be a new normal going back, it's time for me to start thinking and planning for my new normal in how I care for myself and how I operate in my ministry. Because nothing is obligatory anymore. Those kind of mental back of your mind expectations you have as a priest, this is a chance to reset and rethink. So it's a blessed time, really, and one really where prayer is top of the list.
Fantastic. Thank you all. We're going to have an opportunity now to go into breakout rooms. I think there's been so many questions, really great questions about leadership teams, and we've got a few resources that we want to mention to you that will help you as you kind of start to think about this. And we'll share all of that with you at the end when we come back after breakout rooms. But for now, we're going to be in small groups. We would love you just to introduce yourself, tell everyone what struck you about what you've heard so far in this webinar. And then the second question would be, what would be your next step in your parish? So what struck you so far in the webinar, and what will be your next step? We'll have about 10 minutes altogether, and then we'll come back and I'll be sharing those resources at the end, so that we can give you some pointers for where to go from here. So we will give you a 5-minute warning, and then you'll automatically come back into the main session. So we would love you to have a great discussion, and we'll see you in a bit. I hope you had a fantastic discussion that was helpful. As I said, we're going to just share a few things with you that we think might be helpful going from here. We see there's lots of questions around this. I'm just going to ask Patricia to share her screen again, because we have a few things coming up. So we've told you about this a few times. This is the Parish Response Kit that Divine Renovation has put together. This is such a fantastic resource. We've heard of parishes all over the place using this kit, and it's been really helping them to navigate this time. So please download that from divinerenovation.org, and you'll find lots of useful tips in there. Our next webinar in the UK is happening next week. So this is next week with Fr James Mackay and also Sherry Riddell. We're going to be talking about the question of engaging seekers and reaching the unchurched at this time. Lots of us have people joining our live streams, and how can we engage people more deeply at this time, especially when people are asking the big questions about life. And then we've got a couple more coming up over the next couple of weeks to the end of May, which you can see there on the right hand side as well. They're all on the website divinerenovation.org/UK. And please spread the word. Please invite parishes nearby you who you think might find these useful at this time. We, Fr James and Fr Marc are both parishes that are in the Divine Renovation network, and we haven't really mentioned that on the webinars so far, but if we just go to the next slide, we have special webinars just for network parishes where we go into more depth. We've got one tomorrow on how to manage conflict in your team during lockdown. So we're just going more into some of the leadership questions that come up once you start running a team like this. If you're interested in the network, it's a really fantastic way of getting more engaged into some of this stuff, learning how to do it, being connected with other parishes that are doing it. And you have parishes all over the country and in fact all over the world who are trying to use some of these principles, and it really plugs you into everything that's going on. So have a look on our website about that, and you might think about joining the network and joining some of our network only webinars. And we've got a couple of books to mention. One book that is not on the slide, I just wanted to tell you about the Divine Renovation Guidebook. Lots of you will have accessed this already. You'll find it on Amazon. And this guidebook will really help you through some of the leadership team questions that everyone has been asking on the chat today. So some of the basic questions about how to put a team together, how does a team function? Loads of those questions are answered in the Divine Renovation Guidebook. So go onto Amazon, have a look for that. It's a fantastic resource to get you going with a team. And then the final book that was on the slide is Fr James's new book, Fr James Mackay's new book, Beyond the Parish. This is looking at what does divine renovation look like on a diocesan level, and we're really excited about reading this book. I can't wait to get a copy and read it, and we know people around the world are starting to get their copies and read it, so we'd love you to have a look at that as well. Some fantastic lockdown reading. So that's it. Those are all our announcements. We'll kind of, as we always do, we share an email afterwards with all the resources in it and all the different links, so you can have access to all of that. Please do invite people to next week's webinar, which I think is going to be really interesting with Fr James Mackay and Sherry Riddell. And I think it just leaves us really we're going to close with a prayer. So I'd love to ask you, Fr James, just to close us with a prayer today.
Sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessing of Christian family during this time of lockdown. Through the means of the human ingenuity that you have blessed us with, we always find a way to connect, and ways in which your Holy Spirit can to enter into our hearts and to open to us the bigger picture that you always have for us as individuals and for your church. Continue to bless us, to fill us with your Spirit, so that the church that we can only begin to imagine may be realized through your work in us, so that your dream for all of humanity may be realized here and now. And we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Father Mark, Father James and Fiona, and we will see you all hopefully next week. God bless. Have a great week.